Radio-controlled fixed-wing flying is a bit of a journey. You'll start with some learning. You'll continue that learning. You'll begin to improve. You'll begin to get more confident. You'll have some good times, but eventually you'll have some crashes. You'll probably have more than a couple. You'll learn to find that glue is your friend and most planes can be repaired. You'll do some customization, some electronics, you'll chop and you'll change. You'll grow your fleet, you'll buy more aircraft, but eventually through all of this you'll find that it is a really good time and well worth the effort that you've made. Yes, indeed, it's fixed wing time on this channel. First time I'm reviewing a fixed wing aircraft, and this is the ZOHD Orbit wing. Obviously, as you've seen in that montage, it's not something that I'm new to in terms of fixed wing flying. It's just something that I've never actually done on this channel, and I thought when I saw this ZOHD Orbit wing, it ticked a lot of the boxes that I really look for in an aircraft, and I felt it was worthy of getting on the channel so I can share this with a few people. Hopefully it's of interest, but anyway, let's crack on and see what we get inside this thing. Okay, so before we just open the box, let's just go to the side so you can see these are the specifications. Obviously the main ones, 455 grams of weight without cameras, EPP foam, 2204 motor running at 1870 kV, 30 amp ESC in there, couple of 8-gram digital servos, a prop that's actually a self-tightening prop, and recommended battery specs there, 3S 1300 to 2200, so you know, normal size. That's quite a widely available LiPo battery required there. So that's the basic specs. Now what we'll do is we'll get it out the box, and as you can see there is a carry handle, very important in my comments there in regards to transportation, because this is actually, you know, a good case and a carry case as well. So as you can see, what do we get? We've got in here, we've got one wing, we've got two wings, we have got a nose cone, another nose cone. These are based on different camera specs, so obviously that's a GoPro one. You can see that the lens is on this side. It will fit, I think, the Yi cameras. Other ones, you know, GoPro copies basically. That's for a more small FPV one, and there's already one fitted to the nose cone. We've got a little bracket that sits on top here. That's for another additional camera. If you've got something like a longer one, like a Mobius, for example, you can strap it on there. And then we have got the self-tightening 6x3 prop. Obviously, if you did for whatever reason break that, you would be able to use a nut, I believe, to actually fix it, but anyway, that seems to be fairly decent. Hopefully we won't break that. We've got a wing spar, and then we have the beastie itself, the main gubbin. So let's just take that out of the polystyrene there, and this is it. So as you can see, really nicely molded EPP. It says EPP, I have to admit it looks more like EPO. I'm not sure whether there's a massive difference between the two, but either way, very nice black and white colouring on there. You can see some plastic parts. We've got a little grill for breathing there. There's actually a little NACA duct there, so it's designed to actually get the air into there and cool the interior components. So I think in a country like England, that's probably not going to be a major issue. You can see there's actually a couple of CG, centre of gravity marking points there, so you've got a couple of balance points to put your finger on, but that is literally the body. Now the first thing that strikes you is a case of, okay, so where are all the wires going? Where are the plugs? How are you going to get to the wings? And that is what is really nice about this. So we'll just lift the top off here, magnetic, rare earth magnets on there, and this is the guts in here. So we have got the ESC, 30 amp ESC there. We have the flight stabilizer sitting nicely under there with a few connections all ready to go, plugged into to get plugged into a receiver. We've got a strap pre-built for the battery. Obviously we've got the XT30, I believe it is, connector. That's one, and we've then got two servos here with a couple of push rods that disappear, and we've got the motor prefixed with a little screw there, so I believe you can actually get that motor off should you have a problem with it. But this is the interesting point. These are the servos. These are the wing servos. So hang on, the wings aren't attached. What are they running? Well, what they're running are these little doobies here. So these little plugs actually are physical. They're mechanical plugs. So what we do is we grab one of our wings, which I will do right now. So out of the packaging material there, and if we look at the edge of the wing here, this little clip here, this little plastic nub, if I rotate it, that is what is controlling the flight surfaces. So that just slots into the point on the side of the aircraft here servos work, and it actually controls it there. And then you've got this clip, which is just to actually clip the wing in place after you've put, of course, the wing spar through the center of this. So really well thought out there. Now, why that's really nice, because you don't have to faff around with wires, you don't have to feed cables, anything like that. It's literally a case of, to build this aircraft in the field, you take it out of the box, you throw your wing spar through this, and again, you've got some nice pre-made plastic fittings here. You're not going through raw foam or anything like that. And then you just feed that from one end to the other, push it through. That's your wing spar. You then grab your wing, you bung that on the end there, and all you've got to do is basically push that in and make sure at this point that that little nub on the wing, so you keep your control surfaces flat, lines up with it. And once you're there, you can just push it in and click, you're in. And that is literally it. That's all you've got to do. And you now have an aircraft that you can basically, you know, stick the two things on, put a battery in it, you can fly. And then to take it apart, you've just got to wiggle it apart, wing comes off, you can then take your wing spar out, throw it in the box, throw your wing in the box. Obviously you might want to put the lid of the thing down. There we go. One wing in the box, other wing in the box. Job's a good one. Close it up. You've got your handle, you've got your carry case. Such a really clever design, I think. Now, obviously, there's some question marks. You know, will those plastic clips hold up to testing a crash? But the fact that this has got an inbuilt stabiliser, it's got 3 modes of stabilisation: off, medium and high stabilisation, and the idea is that you should be able to put stabilisation mode on, throw it, and it will literally just take off for you, fly up into the sky. Then you can notch it down into semi-stabilised state, and then if you've got the confidence, you can just take off the stabiliser and you can have some manual fun with it. So even for a person like me who's had, you know, those on-off moments with flying, it just gives you that level of confidence to know that if it's a bit blustery, if you're in a location that you're not sure of, like the winds or anything like that, you can just put in stabilisation, throw it up, see how it reacts. If it doesn't react well, you stick it into semi-stabilised, and then you should be able to just land it and walk away. If you're going to have the fun of it, if you've got the confidence, you can then learn that manual flying, and then you can really start enjoying it. And that will give you the confidence to move on to other aircrafts afterwards. So don't get me wrong, there's other options out there. You know, there's plenty of things with the AS3X, for example, from Horizon Hobby, stabilizers, you know, all designed for novice pilots. But this was 85 quid, all built, all packaged with its box, everything like that, 85 quid. That is very good value for money in my mind. And then that's why it really captured me, and the fact it's nice and small. So anyway, enough said on the bench. What I'll do is I'm going to throw a camera in it. I'm going to throw my receiver, probably my Futaba, straight in there. And then I'm just going to try and get it up in the air. And we'll get some footage and see how it reacts. So out into the field for a maiden flight, and so we can see what's going on. I have put the Firefly 7S GoPro style camera in the nose. It's probably about 20 grams lighter than a GoPro Hero 3 or 4 and a damn sight less valuable, which is why it was perfect for this setup. You can see I do have some problems on my first couple of throws. I'm happy to say this is not the aircraft being an issue. It's purely for the fact that I'm used to throwing pusher propped planes, which means that the discus style throw that you do on this, so to avoid your fingers getting chopped off, was a little bit kind of different for me. But once I got the technique down, it kind of just flies up into the air, give it a bit of throttle, and the stabilizer does its job. So immediately I could see that it was going to be a bit of a wobbly flyer. Now that was actually down to a CG issue. It was obvious it wasn't wind because it wasn't very windy on the day, and that's probably for the reason that when I put the camera in the front, I'd actually decided that the thing was too nose heavy with the battery in the Velcro strap, so I'd moved the battery back. I'd obviously moved it a little bit too far, given it a bit of tail heaviness, so once I'd managed to land it, which I was able to do because of the stabilizer, I just made a couple of adjustments, moved the battery alarm forward, tweaked where the battery cables were, and that was literally enough to be able to get much smoother flight out of it. You can see on this picture here that this is kind of the recommended setup. So I've got a 1300 milliamp 3S battery in the Velcro. The problem is with this is it flies fantastically if you don't have a front mounted nose camera, but as soon as you put that camera in there, especially a GoPro style one, you are too nose heavy. So what I decided to do was actually take the battery out of that clasp and move it backwards, put some Velcro on the bottom of it, put it over the flight controller, but it was very important then to make sure that the battery leads and that battery alarm were a little bit further forward, and just by doing that, that made all the difference. This thing though can take a huge battery if you wanted to. They say it goes up to 2200. Ironically, from the old DJI Phantom days, I had a 2.25 milliamp hour 3S, and that will just about squeeze in there. Now that would give you ridiculous flight times if you can get the thing balanced properly, because on a 1300 3S I was probably doing 35 to 40 minutes of continuous flying in relatively low winds. So great from the point of view of doing long range flying if you wanted an option there. Obviously you're going to have less room if you've got a big battery in there for your FPV equipment, but it's lovely to know that you do have that as an option. So the Stabiliser for the most part does its job in exactly the way that you want it. If you leave it in 6-axis mode, you really can't get into a lot of trouble. You can literally stall this thing out to a point where it should fall out of the sky, but it will just let it glide on, and that's really, really nice, especially if you've never flown a flying wing before. 3-axis mode, which is its other mode, it gives you a little bit more control on some of the control surfaces, and it does allow you to do some loops and rolls and things like that. Now if you put this on a 3-pole switch, technically speaking you can also turn it off, but interestingly in the manual it doesn't actually mention that that is a mode that is allowed. The other thing that I noticed is when you do turn it off, the flight controller light actually shows an error message on it, and also you never have full control of all the authority of your control surfaces. So while you can tell that the servos can travel further than they do, it never actually allows you to do that. So if you wanted to do this for very fast flying or stunt flying, I genuinely think you'd end up having to remove the Stabiliser and either replacing it with one of your own or just having nothing in there at all. Not a major problem for most of the people that want to fly this. I personally just enjoy flying it around in 6-axis mode, gliding about, and obviously you can put your FPV equipment in there and you can enjoy it from that point of view. And that's really, I think, what this is designed to be about. I don't think it's supposed to be a gate racer, even though you could put a 4S battery in it, the ESC will allow it, and it would probably be a bit of a screamer if you wanted to do that, but I genuinely don't think you'd want to do that if you had the Stabiliser still in it. So the other thing that I really like about this Orbit is it's very, very resilient and very, very forgiving if you do get it wrong. You'll see here I was filming with my Mavic trying to get some epic shots of it in flight and managed to crash it into a field. Fortunately for the fact that the Mavic had lots of battery life, I was able to find it, hover over the top of it and recover it, and then check for damage. Now there was no damage whatsoever to it at all, and so far I've crashed it a number of times, as you're going to see over the next few shots, and I really haven't had any problems. This was probably the worst crash that I had, which was onto a patch of concrete. I just got it a little bit too wrong, and this actually threw the camera probably about 4 feet forwards from the impact. I really thought something would be broken. I especially expected one of the wings to have some damage, some scraping, maybe a winglet knocked off, but no, absolutely nothing. And genuinely, once I'd actually cleaned it off, you really couldn't tell it from any other new aircraft. It just took no damage at all. Now this is probably for the fact that it's a EPP plane, and B, that it's actually a very lightweight model. But you can see I've really given this a bit of a pummeling over the last couple of weeks whilst I've been doing these videos, and it's just stood the test of time. So if you're one of those people that has accidents like I do every time I fly a fixed wing aircraft, this is definitely going to be a plus point for you. So what kind of pilot would I recommend the ZOHD Orbit Wing to? Well, I wouldn't say this is necessarily going to be a first plane, purely for the fact that it is a flying wing. They are a little bit twitchy in the air when you're not using the Stabiliser, and for that reason you need to be able to react and get it back into the full stabilisation mode quite quickly and from a reasonable altitude. I think you could maybe get away with it as a first plane because of that, but you know, you're probably better off buying something like a powered glider similar to a Bixler 2 or a Bix 3. They're just more docile, they're much more forgiving even without the Stabiliser, and obviously if you have the option of then buying something like an Eagle Tree Guardian for an internal Stabiliser, you're going to get the best out of it. You'll be able to learn slowly but surely, and then something like this would be a perfect second plane. The other people that I would recommend this to is anyone who's been flying in any way, shape or form and they just want something quick, fun and easy to put together. The construction of this thing is just superb. I genuinely wish that other manufacturers would consider doing something like this with the mechanical fixings, or at least the plug-in wings. The idea of having to faff around with all your wires and everything like that, that's always something for me that's been a bit of a drawback when doing fixed wing flying, and you know, moments where you go out to the field and you forget that you've not remembered the prop nut, or you've not got one of the clasps that hold one of the wings down. There's nothing more frustrating than having that, And with this aircraft, you can literally just throw 2 wings, the body, a battery, and your transmitter, and everything is in place. You can get it up and running so unbelievably quickly, and that is a massive selling point in my mind. The stabilisation, as I've said, is absolutely great. I think that's good. I personally will probably be swapping it out for something different. I'll probably take it out and put something like the Furious FPV FC35 Lightning controller in there, because that would also give me the element of GPS flight, and potentially, because this will go very, very far with a decent sized battery, you could use this for a long distance FPV flyer. It is worth mentioning that I did have a few major issues actually with setup of this. The theory is that you should just be able to grab your receiver, plug in the 4 wires, get your controller set up, and you're away. The big problem that I had, and it turned out to be a Futaba related problem, was that the flight controller just would not see the receiver unless it saw the binding process happening. Very strange. It took me a long time to realise this. I had to try different receivers, easy UHF, PPM modes, everything like that, just to make sure that I was happy that the flight controller was actually okay and working, and that the ESC and the motor were all alright as well. I'll do a separate video on this, because this is something that's going to trip up anyone who is a Futaba user potentially, unless it was just a one-off, but I have seen threads on various forums saying that they've had problems like that. So check my channel out over the next couple of weeks, and I'll get a video specifically for that. Most people though, people who are using the Taranis and the FlySky stuff, they're going to be able to plug it in straight away, have no problems whatsoever, and I think once you've done that, you know, you're going to realise what a nice plane this is to own. If the main thing you want is FPV, then definitely this plane is going to tick a lot of the boxes for you. The multiple housings for different cameras is going to be fantastic. There is plenty of space under that canopy to mount various bits of equipment. I was able to fit my 500mm Fat Shark receiver, made a little hole in the canopy. That allowed me to easily connect it at the flight field, but also have that storage. It does add a little bit of weight. You do still have to concentrate very much on that centre of gravity, because that can be a problem, but you can also fit a very large battery in this, so the extra weight and getting the CG right, you can get some very long range flights in my opinion. In terms of the negatives of the Orbit wing, I would say, to be honest, there's not many of them. The fact it does have this proprietary propeller is going to be a bit of a downside if you break it. I can't find any replacements in the UK for that at the moment, which is a bit of a shame. You do have the option, if you did break it, of removing the motor completely and replacing it with something like a FPV racer motor. It's a very common size of motor, and it might be a good idea to do that anyway, but for many people they're going to want to buy this for that kind of plug and play thing, so it's going to be very frustrating if you have to wait a couple of weeks for a delivery from China to get back in the air after that. Overall though, fantastic aircraft. I genuinely think this is now my favourite aircraft, and the one that I'm going to use more than anything, especially when it comes to just throwing something up in the air and having some fun. I love the fact that I can do long range flying, I can do FPV flying, and there's plenty of options to upgrade it if I want to, and the fact it's got that lovely carry case and I can just use it whenever I want. So highly recommended. Hopefully this video has been useful for everyone, and I will see you on the next one.